The morning air was sharp and unforgiving, the kind that made every breath feel heavier than it should. At the quiet edge of the city, near a glass bus shelter where polished shoes usually passed without noticing anything beneath them, a single moment unfolded that would change several lives forever. An old wheelchair sat slightly crooked on the pavement, its metal frame scratched and worn, holding a man whose posture spoke of years of discipline and loss. At his feet lay a dog, loyal to the end, flinching as a shadow loomed over him. Power, arrogance, and cruelty had gathered in expensive suits, and they believed no one strong enough was watching. Before this story goes any further, if you believe that kindness still matters in a world that often forgets it, if you believe in second chances and standing up for the vulnerable, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with others, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach the hearts that need them most. The man in the wheelchair was named Thomas Hale. He was 71 years old, a retired combat veteran who had given the best years of his life to service. Decades earlier, he had been strong enough to carry others through smoke and fire, but a roadside blast overseas had taken his legs and much of the life he once knew. Medals lay forgotten in a drawer back home, polished once a year out of habit, not pride. What remained of his daily world was small and quiet. A modest apartment. A strict routine. And his dog, Ranger, a mixed-breed shepherd with graying fur and eyes that never stopped watching over him. That morning, Thomas had left early for a routine medical appointment. Public transport was cheaper, and he preferred it. Ranger walked beside the wheelchair, trained and gentle, never straying far. To Thomas, Ranger was not just a dog. He was balance when the world tilted, warmth during cold nights, and purpose when loneliness crept in. Ranger had learned to. The bus shelter stood between a corporate plaza and a newly built luxury complex. It was the kind of place where wealth passed through quickly, never settling long enough to see the cracks beneath its shine. That morning, 3 men in tailored suits approached, their voices loud, their laughter careless. They were late for something important, something they believed mattered more than anything else. When they noticed Thomas, the wheelchair, and the dog occupying space near the bench, irritation flickered across their faces. At first, it was just looks. Then muttered words. The kind of words people use when they assume the world belongs to them. Thomas felt it immediately. Years of survival had sharpened his awareness. He kept his gaze low, one hand resting on Ranger's head, silently hoping the moment would pass. But entitlement rarely walks away on its own. One of the men stepped too close. Another scoffed. A foot nudged Ranger aside, not hard at first, but enough to make the dog yelp and roll onto his side in surprise. The sound cut through Thomas like a blade. His heart raced, his breath grew shallow. He tried to pull Ranger closer, his hands trembling with helpless fury. The men laughed, emboldened by each other, by the absence of consequences they had grown used to. To them, Thomas was invisible. A broken man in a broken chair. To them, Ranger was nothing more than an inconvenience on the pavement. But cruelty has a way of echoing farther than expected. From down the sidewalk, beyond the shelter, a figure was moving fast. Boots struck concrete with purpose. A man in worn tactical clothing, broad-shouldered and powerful, ran toward the scene. His eyes were locked ahead, jaw clenched, breath controlled despite the speed. He had seen the kick. He had heard the yelp. And something deep inside him, something forged in places where survival depended on loyalty and honor, snapped awake. His name was Aaron Cole. A Navy SEAL, recently returned home, carrying his own invisible scars. He had survived missions most people would never hear about, lost brothers whose names were etched into his memory rather than stone. Civilian life still felt foreign to him. Crowds made him restless. Silence felt too loud. But one thing had never left him, the instinct to protect those who could not protect themselves. As Aaron closed the distance, the men in suits were still posturing, still amused by their own dominance. They did not see him until his presence was impossible to ignore. The air seemed to shift. Confidence drained from their faces as they turned and found themselves confronted by a man whose calm was far more dangerous than anger. Aaron placed himself between Thomas and the others, his body a solid barrier. He did not shout. He did not threaten. He simply stood there, eyes steady, unyielding. Years of command and discipline radiated from him. The kind of authority that could not be bought or tailored. Thomas looked up, confusion and fear mixing with disbelief. Ranger, still on the ground, lifted his head and wagged his tail weakly, sensing safety returning. The men tried to recover their arrogance, but it faltered. They were used to power flowing one way. This was different. This was the kind of presence that had nothing to prove and everything to enforce. People began to notice. A woman stopped walking. A man slowed his car. Phones came out. The moment that was meant to be small and cruel was becoming very public. Aaron knelt beside Ranger first, checking him with careful hands, the same way he had once checked wounded teammates. The dog whined softly, then relaxed under the touch. Aaron then turned to Thomas, meeting his eyes with respect, not pity. He adjusted the wheelchair slightly, straightening it, restoring dignity in a way that words never could. The suited men stepped back. One muttered something about misunderstanding. Another glanced around, suddenly aware of the attention. Their power evaporated under the weight of witnesses and consequence. Authorities arrived shortly after, alerted by bystanders. Statements were taken. Footage was reviewed. What had started as casual cruelty ended in accountability. The men left not in triumph, but in shame, their status unable to shield them from what they had done. When the crowd dispersed and the noise faded, what remained was quiet gratitude. Aaron stayed until Thomas's bus arrived. He helped settle Ranger back at his side. He made sure Thomas was steady, safe. Thomas felt something he had not felt in years, not just relief, but recognition. Someone had seen him. Not as a burden. Not as an obstacle. But as a man who mattered. The bus pulled up. As Thomas rolled on, he looked back once more. Aaron stood there, hands at his sides, watching until the doors closed. Two men shaped by war, separated by years and circumstance, connected by a single act of humanity. Life did not magically change overnight. Thomas still had appointments. Still had quiet evenings. Still carried memories that never fully faded. But something inside him had shifted. The world felt slightly less hostile. Ranger slept more peacefully that night, curled closer than ever in news of the incident spread online. Not for the cruelty, but for the courage. People shared the video, not because it was sensational, but because it reminded them of something they feared was disappearing, that decency still existed, that strength could be gentle, that honor could show up when least expected. Aaron never sought attention. He returned to his life, his training, his long walks meant to calm a restless mind. But he carried the moment with him too. Proof that even outside the battlefield, there were still missions worth answering. If this story has touched your heart, if it reminded you that standing up for others can